In this video, we're going to learn how to write our very first p5.js sketch. Let's get started. So first of all, let's take a look at this section. This is where we define the name of our sketch. And usually by default, there's a randomly generated name for the sketch. And personally, I like to name my sketch with the date of today, which is February 22. And I'm going to call this first sketch. And now I just named the sketch, and then what I can do is to click File and Save, or use the shortcut. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to use Command S, and if you're on a PC, it should be Control S. And as soon as I save the sketch, you'll see that it says it's saved now, and now it says saved 15 seconds ago. That's essentially, if you see the word saved, that's indication that your sketch is saved. And then as you write your code, if you have the autosave turned on, the p5.js should be able to automatically save your sketch from time to time. So first, what are the things that we have here? What we can see, there are right now 7 lines of code in total. On the top, we have something that says function setup, and then on the line 5, we have something that says function draw. So these are 2 functions, and these are functions that are supported by p5.js to be used as part of the p5.js sketch. About what exactly do they do? The setup, as you can kind of guess from the name, setup is the preparation of the sketch. And every p5.js sketch, you can think of it as a drawing or painting. So the setup process is where you do the preparation work. So you prepare your canvas, you prepare your brushes, you prepare a variety of things, and then the draw is where the active motion of drawing happens. So what do I mean by the active motion? Because p5.js is really built for drawing visuals, and in particular, it's designed for building animated, moving visuals. So draw function actually runs non-stop, always keeps going, unless you write code specifically to ask the draw function not to run. And usually, as long as the p5.js sketch is going to try to run at 60 frames per second. So that's kind of similar to the idea of filmmaking or animation, where the images is going to refresh. A new image is going to be drawn every second. There's going to be 60 different images. So every 1/60th of a second, there's going to be a new image. And we also have the ability to control that frame rate. By default, it's usually about 60 frames per second, but it also depends on the performance of your computer and a lot of other factors. So draw, all that is to say that the draw function happens multiple times. It will run, or whatever code that we write inside of the draw function is going to happen multiple times every second, and usually 60 times every second. And let's go ahead and click the run button and see what happens. So we see a light gray square. And why is that? If we look closely to the setup, it says create canvas 400 by 400 400. So what are the numbers? You might have some guesses, but why don't we just learn by changing those numbers? I'm going to change the first number to 40, and we notice how the width of the canvas become narrower. If I change the height to 40, now we notice how the height of the canvas also changed. And then if I change the width back, the width goes back to 400. And if I change the height to 200, now we have a 200 high tall canvas. I'm going to change this back to 400. So what we learned by those trial and errors is that the first number represents the width of the canvas, and the second number represents the height of the canvas. And the canvas is this virtual canvas where we will be doing our drawing on. And inside of this draw function, we see there is something that says background 220. Again, we can try to change this number. If I change to 0, it becomes black. If I change it to 100, it's kind of a dark gray. 200, sort of a light gray. 300, it's white. 400, 500, or 600, that's all white. So what exactly this is doing? It's changing the brightness or changing the color of the background. But what are the colors that we can choose from? So in fact, the colors that you can choose is a number anywhere from 0 to 255, and 255 is going to be the brightest, meaning that is when the canvas is going to be white, whereas 0 will mean that the background is going to be black. And this, there are very technical reasons why these numbers are decided, but the most popular or standard way of representing color, or most common way, let's say, is to use numbers that's from 0 to 255. And so 255 is going to be the brightest. And so so what we have here, create canvas and parenthesis. So this is a structure of a function, and whereas setup and draw are also functions. So setup or draw are functions that we just created with the code, whereas create canvas and background are functions that someone else has written for us, which is part of the p5.js library, and we are purely using them to use those functions to do certain things for us. In the case of create canvas, it helps us create the canvas. In the case of background, it helps us draw the background or change the color of the background. And let's try to draw our very first circle. So if you want to draw a circle, we can type the word circle and then follow the same format such as the create canvas or background. So circle and parenthesis and end with semicolon. So that's the format of every statement or every line of code that you would usually write. But within the parentheses, we can specify some information, some arguments, what are called arguments. Essentially, these are the numbers or things that we can specify to customize the shape that we want to draw. So in this case, we want to draw the circle at a certain location, which will be represented with X and Y. So let's try to write 0, 0. And then we also need to give it a size, because that's otherwise P5 won't be able to know how big the circle is. So let's say 100. And now we see a circle on the very top left. So why is that top left? So if you've learned math, maybe you've learned Cartesian coordinate in math, and you'll know that when we do that, the origin or 0, 0 is usually at the bottom left. However, in this case, in P5, the origin is actually on the top left. So this is just something that, a convention that P5.js adapted. Many other computer graphics program or platform also adopt the same convention, even though not all of them follow this rule. So let's try to change one of the number. And when I change the second number, the y-axis of the y-coordinate of circle changes. If I change the first number, the x-coordinate of the circle changes. And when I have 200, 200, it's right at the center. So why is it that when I increase the number from 0 to 200, it's moving to the right and moving to the left? Let's take a quick look at how the p5.js coordinate looks like. I'm going to draw on my whiteboard. So it looks like so. On the very top left, it's 0, 0. And then vertically, this is the y-axis. Horizontally, that's the x-axis. So as you're moving things down, let's say this point, the y-axis, value increases. So that is roughly 0, 100. And over here, this is going to be 0, 200. And similarly, over here, that is going to be 100, 0, and 200, 0. And then if you want to put something over here, that is going to be 200, 200. So that's the coordinate, and that's what the coordinate looks like. Let's get back to the P5JS sketch. So we just drew our very first circle, and what are some of the things that we can change about the circle? We can change the color of the circle with a function called fill. So the fill, what color do we use to fill the circle? And in order to indicate color, there are a few different ways. One is, like we've already learned with background, you can use a number. So 255, that's white, it's already white. If I put 0, it's a black circle. 100, it's gray. And there's other ways to represent color. One of the easiest way is to use name of colors. So fill, and then inside of this parentheses, we can put double quotes or single quotes. And within the double quotes, we can then put the name of the color, such as red for red color, yellow for yellow color, or green, or any other color like navy, we get a navy color. So at this point, this is a matter of vocabulary. As the more color names you know, the more colors you will be able to use. And of course, it might not support every single color name, so you can always try it out, or you can look up in the reference what colors are supported. So this is one way that we can create, we can define color. Also, we can use numbers in other ways. So if in computer graphics or on computer in general, colors are usually represented with 3 values, R, G, and B. Stands for red, green, and blue. And that is because on our screen, the digital displays are usually, when we see white light, actually if you zoom all the way in with a magnifying glass, you'll see that each pixel we have is actually consists of 3 different colors, which are red, green, and blue. And these are the and different combination of brightness of those 3 colors are how we are seeing all these colorful displays. And that is going to be how we specify the color for P5JS as well. So 3 numbers and separated by commas. If we write 255 dot comma 0 comma 0, we're going to get red because the first number represents red. And again, 255 is the maximum amount of redness that you can get, at least by default. So now I get red. And then if I change the second number to 255, we get yellow because in color, when we add red and green, we get yellow. And then if I change the last 0 to 255, we get white because when the brightness of all 3 colors are at the brightest, we get white when all 3 colors are mixed together. And then with this, we can get a combination of colors. And of course, we don't have to write 255. We can have a smaller amount of red and maybe also a smaller amount of blue. And then we get a purple color. Also, we can simply search something like a color picker in Google. Then we can choose any color that we want. Let's say if I want to pick a blue, like this blue, then we'll see that there is different ways to represent this color. And one of the way is the RGB values. So I can simply copy these numbers, go back to my sketch, and instead of fill, I can replace these numbers to in the fill and click play, and I get the exact blue color that I picked. And that is because again, this is a pretty common way to represent color. So this is RGB value here are also represented by number from 0 to 255. So there's one last way to represent color, which is to use what's called a hex value, as you can see over here. So this is another option. Essentially, these numbers, these are the same RGB values that are represented with hexadecimal values that started with this pound sign, this like hashtag sign. You can click on this copy, go back here. when we use hex values, we need to make sure we put the value in between quotes, just like the color names. So now we see that if I delete this, we get the exact same color. So these are the different ways that we can change color. And similarly, we can also change the color of the stroke. So if I change stroke, let's say red to 5500 and play. So I get red. You might not be able to, it's a little harder to see. Another thing we can change is the weight of the stroke. So the thickness of the stroke. I'm going to change that to 10. So now we have a very thick line around the circle, and that is red. We can also change that to something like 0 and 255. So we have a darker blue around the circle. So these are the basic functions we can use for drawing. How to draw a circle, how to change the fill color, the stroke color, as well as the stroke thickness, the stroke weight. There are a ton of shape that we can, there are a few shapes that we can draw, and we can go to help, reference, and the reference page is really going to be your friend when you're learning p5.js, because that's where every single function within p5.js is listed. And at the very top, we can see that's where the 2D primitives are. So these are the shapes that we can draw with p5.js: arc, circle, ellipse, line, point, quad, rectangle, square, and triangle. So then if you want to draw any other shape, you can simply click on that shape. So in this case, rect is what's used to draw a rectangle, and we can read about read the description. We can see the examples. Inside of the example, we can even, just like what we did earlier, we can simply change some numbers. So rect, what if I change the 30 to 40 and play this again and move to the right? So this value is changing the x, and if I change this to 0, I'm going to move to the left. So it's going to move up, so that's changing the y-axis, and then so on and so forth, and you can know how it's changing width and height. So you can test it out. You can also change the radius of the corner and a lot of other features. And more specifically, we can check the syntax. So syntax is showing the grammar of this function, how this function works. And as we can see, it says x, y, and w. So the x value, x coordinate, y coordinate, w is for the width of the rectangle, and h is height of the rectangle, and then the corners and other stuff. One thing you'll notice is some of the values are, or some of those parameters are wrapped by square brackets. That means that particular parameter is optional. So for the rectangle function, we need at least x, y, and w, but you do not have to provide the height, because if you don't provide the height, p5 is going to assume that you want to draw a square and use the width as the height of this rectangle, which is going to be a square. So this is going to be where we can look up or the references and learn other functions. And once we know how to draw a circle, then how to draw other things are also very similar, and you can find the details in the reference page. So back to our P5 sketch, since we just looked at rectangle, why don't we also learn a little bit about drawing rectangles? So let's try to draw a rectangle over here. So rectangle, actually accidentally typed the whole word. To draw a rectangle, we simply use rect, and then parentheses, again, just like how we write all the other functions, and provide the coordinate. Let's say if I want to draw at the exact same location, 200, 200, and then the width and height, so maybe 100 for the width and 50 for the height. And then we realize one thing, which is that the rectangle and the circle are not at the same location. Why? That is because a circle and rectangles are treated differently. So by default, when you are drawing a circle, the coordinate that you specify is going to be the center of the circle. However, if you are drawing a rectangle, it's more common, or essentially P5 decided that it didn't really decide, the creator of P5 or the contributors of P5 collectively decided that when we draw a rectangle, we want to specify the top left corner of that rectangle. But this might not always be true. So if in this case, I simply want to center everything, I want to make sure both the circle is at the center of the canvas and also the rectangle also at the center of the canvas. In that case, we can use a function called rect mode, which modifies how we draw, or how the P5.js draws a rectangle. I will do that before the function. So in P5.js, the code runs sequentially, one by one. So this is why when we are changing the color, we actually, instead of drawing the circle and then change the color, instead of doing that, think of this as switching to a new drawing instrument, switch into a new paintbrush. So the fill is like grabbing this light blue paintbrush, and then grabbing another one for the stroke with darker blue and with that specified with the thickness, and then we draw that shape. So we have to gather those tools first, and the specified tools first, and then draw based on those specifications. So that's why we have to write these functions first and then do this, because if you do it in reverse, draw the circle first, then it's already too late for you to change the color, because you can't change colors of shapes after the fact. Instead, change the color, make sure you use the right color before you draw things. So now, in this case, for the rectangle, I'm going to change the rect mode. And for rect mode, again, you can check out the reference, but there are a few different ways that you can draw rectangle. One of the mode is center, meaning the coordinate is going to be the center of the rectangle. And if I run this, now I have the rectangle at exactly same position as a circle. They're symmetrical. And in addition, if I want to change the color of the rectangle, I will write fill, and let's say if I want green rectangle, then I change the fill over there, and I can also change the stroke color. Maybe I want a darker green, so I have less amount of greenness, so that's how it becomes darker. And I can also change the stroke weight to maybe 5, make it a little bit thinner. And at this point, maybe I'll make the stroke slightly longer. And we can also, one other thing we can do is, in rectangle, if you add one more value, that is going to be the radius of the corner. So if you want to have rounded corner, you can have 5, and now we have maybe a little bit more, 10. So now we have a rectangle with rounded corners. So this gives us a beginning. This is the first sketch. This gives us a tool to be able to draw basic shapes, any primitive shape that you can see in the reference, and also be able to use different colors. And I hope you had fun, and please go ahead and try to draw something. Draw your favorite animal, or draw a self-portrait, draw your favorite person, and try to draw something. With coding, it's really hard to learn coding by simply watching. It's really important to write code yourself and practice, and that's how we get familiar with coding, and that's how we can get better at this. I'll see you in the next video.